Our curtain falls. This part right here might be linked to Ammon, because he has that ability back in Circus Tower, which is like literally called curtain fall, right? But what I want to focus on is, guys, listen, this is the reading that's coming from a Greek guy. If I see Greek words, I will just, put them in. And at the same time, I will toss one or two Greek words for you guys. I will be reading this. It's in English, the text is in English, okay? But I will be offering, the words in Greek. You will see. Emet-Selch. My name rang out in the capital, the caller's voice resounding through the foyer. I could hardly pretend to not have heard, alas, and thus turned to face my pursuer. I had been so close to escaping. The voice belonged, as I knew it would, to a white-robed youth of small stature, who was hastening across the hall. His red mask marked him out of the convocation of 14 Elidibus. I fixed him with an inquiring look as he recovered his breath. When at last he spoke, it was, as ever, in earnest. Do you know of the volcano we will be discussing at the next session? I know that we are due for some pyrotechnics, okay? Pyrotechniki, by the way, it comes from the Greek word pyra, fire, and technikos, technician. According to reports circulated among the convocation, there had been unusual ethereal activity of an isolated volcanic isle, which is to say, an eruption was forthcoming. I wonder how Ashen's names pronounced in Greek sound like. If I find one that is Greek, I will tell you. Elidibus is not a Greek. By the way, it's fairly easy to pronounce something in Greek. Just pronounce it as you see it. If you were to pronounce this in a Greek way, you would pronounce it as due. This would be some. This would be pyrotechnics. Okay? This is what we do. We just read what we type. According to reports circulated among the convocation, okay, we've already read that about the volcanic isle, right? The island had one village upon it and a wealth of fertile farmland, all of which would soon be lost. Allah, that was simply the way of the world. As in many such cases, orolosmas was merely to acknowledge the fact. See, acknowledge, you guys thought to pronounce it as acknowledge or something, but we go acknowledge, you see the CK, ak, anyway, it's silly. The islanders, the Islanders in Greek, in the Greek way that we would read it, the islanders would do the same, and those who deemed it prudent had likely begun to move elsewhere. While it was true that the convocation intended to discuss the matter, the conclusion would be no less unapoplectic. But then why had Elidibus approached me? Well, Azem sent me here, and is resolved to stop the eruption. Okay, naturally, I felt my brow furrowing and fought to suppress a scowl that threatened to pull my forehead down to my eyes. How I eventually managed. I meant reading in Greek way, not necessarily have meaning. Okay, got it. I will give you guys more info in this. Ask away, for real. I would just respond all of these questions. It's the least I can offer. It's the least, yeah. You have heard of Ifrita, yes? The fire spirit. Bro! Yo, holy flying testicle Tuesday! Lahabruh's masterwork, an impressive concept even for him. It truly is incredible, the youth said with quiet fervency and determined line of his lips curving into a grin. Generally, I found his ardent admiration for the rest of the council endearing, if embarrassing, but at the moment, I was rather preoccupied with the implications of his suggestion. It's a wonder my brow ever recovered. Ifrita, a manifestation of consecrated fire ether. So, the first primal, and yeah, I know, we can hear the fucking, this thing is from, what is the Alliance raid? The Nia raid back in Shadowbringers. Okay. Manifestation of consecrated fire ether. I would see what Asem was planning. Transform the Volcano's ether into Ifrita, throw her away, then destroy her elsewhere. This would safely disperse the excess. Of course, the plan required someone to procure the concept of Ifrita for Asem, but it was someone, was not Lahabruh himself. Who else could it be? Emet, probably, right? Bro, we're slaying primals even before we even fucking existed. As everyone knew, concepts were stored in the bureau of the architect. Thlodeos then. And not all could be readily removed for personal use. The chief of the bureau, however, could grant access as he pleased. Who else indeed? I pictured my friend cheerfully sending Azem off to battle without a single thought. Forgetting my mask, I clapped my palm onto my forehead in exasperation, which Elidibus duly took as a sign that I understood. If things get out of hand, Azem could be censured again. And here, the youth paused, but I'm sure that won't happen. Not with your help. Sorry. My brow retained its descent. Very well, but are you certain it is wise for the emissary to ally himself with so divisive a figure? Bro! Interesting. Oh, I'm not, he replied with practiced deftness. I am simply giving Azem's opinion on the matter equal weight. The debater then. The rest of the 14 have yet to reach a verdict after all. Σε αυτό το σημείο, I could not argue though. I wasn't particularly inclined to agree, and so I shrugged, musing inwardly that Azem was lucky. The current emissary was such a kindly soul. Before we parted ways, however, I couldn't resist asking one more question. Did you happen to find out why Azem is so keen on preventing this ekryxy? The youth frowned, inevitably striving to recall the conversation with Azem as accurately as possible. It wouldn't do for the emissary to speak unadvisedly. After all, I waited patiently. If I recall correctly, he began at length, with the air of one about to reveal a grave truth. The grapes grown on that isle are particularly delicious, or so Azem said. They must be truly αξιοθαύμαστα. Azem does stuff, does not explain, gets censored, keeps doing stuff anyway. Giga chat indeed. Fun fact, modern Vietnamese alphabet was made by the Portuguese, which is similar to Greek mainland Europe in pronouncing words. Really? Interesting. But yeah, let's go back to the grapes. Later on, they were affected by the French as well. I don't know, bro. Like, I have negative idea. Indeed, pragmati, I couldn't bring myself to shatter his faith. I did, however, vow to treat my friends to a lecture on priorities. Blissfully ignorant of my misgivings, the young man smiled to himself again and bade me farewell. As he wandered away, I swore to heard him murmur something about Azem, ever refreshing perspective. Bruh, listen, okay? Azem is a Chad. We are the Chad. We're the Giga Chad. That's the sort of person Elidibus was, eager to fulfill his duty. He also respected and admired the convocation more than any other. Many of us, he was just a younger brother of sorts. I'm so sad that this guy died, by the way. And when it became clear he was the most suitable candidate for Zodiark's heart, it mattered not how strong our resolve. There was none among us who did not waver. Could there have been a greater shock than our subsequent reunion? This was soon after Zodiark became the will of the star and our final days were averted. The people were divided, unable to decide what to do with the future that now stretched out before them. Many wished to trade the new life which had sprang forth to reclaim those lost in sacrifice to Zodiark. No small number, however, insisted that the fate of our world should be entrusted to those self-same, freshly minded souls, as were our at our wits' ends. Sorry, all were at our wits' ends. At once we saw it shimmering. It poured out of Zodiark's breast and resolved into the shape of a man. As he looked us over, mouths agape, no doubt he gave what passed for an earnest smile. Fear not, you will make the right choice, and I will see it through. So Elidibus. How long had passed? Since then, I do not care to remember. In any case, my role as Zos Galvus, founder of an empire, had concluded, and I was drifting. I thought I might settle down for a nice, peaceful nap in the rift of a century or so. It would serve to rinse away the cloying residue of Solus, whose body I had left back at the source, in the source. One would not remain perpetually in character. Not that there was much point in me retaining my sense of self. I had thought more than once that it would be easier to simply have done with it and discard my real form altogether. Yet, given the state of the other two unsundered, some part of me was convinced that if I remained stubborn, a reason more compelling than hollow sentiment would come along eventually. Emet-Selch! My name rang out in the darkness, tanging me back to consciousness. Pali? I elected to ignore the disturbance, but the voice was persistent. Once more, it called closer now. though the voice was the same as one which had ambushed me in the capital not long ago. It sounded as if it belonged to another person entirely. Perhaps it did. Lahabruh is gone, the voice said softly. I could hardly continue to feign slumber at that. So I righted myself and turned to face Elidibus. The silence that stretched between us only affirmed the truth that had gone unspoken. For us, death was not the end, but gone. We all knew this day would come. I closed my eyes, letting out a measured breath of what's passed for one in the emptiness of the rift. He was right, of course. Lahabruh's boldness had grown only with the passage of ages, seguing the inevitable into aproxia, recklessness. Return to oblivion, very well indeed, very much indeed. Lahabruh did return to oblivion, or he didn't. Across many vessels and many worlds he blazed this trail. Each map led forward, leaving him that much more broken. Not that satisfied with having brought about 7th umbral calamity, he labored needlessly to prolong it. Was it his affinity for concepts of flame that made him so like the fire itself? From peerless Ifrita to that hopeless immortal bird, his creations had burned bright and beautiful, as did he. Hopelessly immortal bird. Hold up. Wait a minute. This hopelessly immortal bird, I believe, is the one that we saw in Through His Eyes, right? The phoenix that gets slamming on the fucking ground, and then he would come back, and then he would slam again, and then, like, this was a never-ending circle of death to life, right? So, if you have read one of the short stories, you get references to the others. I guess I should have read all of them, you know, one at a time, like, you know, first, second, third, fourth, right? But I went, like, fourth into 7. I mean, it happens, it is what it is. Interesting. He should have known what becomes of the flame once all L is ash. Staffy. I opened my eyes to take my brother's face, but the lips, visible below his mask, bore no expression. Would he never again show what he felt for us, as he once had so lately? What? Were those very sentiments long lost? Wait, what? Who is the empty one? What is it? Emet-Selch. Nothing. I was only thinking of how similar Lahabruh was to his creations. Had the Elidibus turned hollow? Or which of the two had turned hollow? I didn't understand there, and I think this is an important part. His creations. I had a little difficulty reading Elidibus' uncertainty this time. He couldn't remember. If his clenched fists were any indication, he shared my conclusion, yet another part of him had been lost. Ever since the day he had reappeared to us as the embodiment of hope, time's tides had conspired to wash away what bits and pieces remained of the person he once was. So, Elidibus was different. Will you not look at your crystal? I asked. When Elidibus was still Elidibus and Lahabruh still Lahabruh, we had collected all of our memories of the 14 and committed them to crystal, that those who would take our seats would one day might learn. Elidibus would, I was sure, find much within to help him remember, yet he shook his head. I am Elidibus. So long as I remember my duty, that is enough. Aught else, I would only lose again in the course of this timeless struggle. And if these memories were truly so precious, pray do not ask that I forget them twice. Interesting. On this point too, I couldn't argue though again. I could hardly agree. Holy fuck. As he was now, however, I doubted that Elidibus could tell my shrug was affected. I make for the source... Holy fuck. Okay, I'm allergic to the source, okay? I made for the source to put an end to the one who laid Lahabruh low, he said. As teleportation magic began to roll around him. Sounds like a layered hero, not much for you, in other words. Interesting. We must always prepare for the worst. If we are to succeed, you must resume your efforts as well. I was half inclined to tell him that I preferred to sleep, but of course he was already gone, leaving me alone in the darkness. Holy fuck, bro. Elidibus the Ancient versus Elidibus the Ancient Paragon. Yup. One was full of love and care and hope for his brethren, and the other one was hope as in sense of duty. This was the last time I ever saw Elidibus. Holy fuck, bro. And now? Now my charms are overthrown, and what strength I have is my own, which I most faint as is my breath, that quavers here at the brink of death. It was here my fate to wager all, for that which wroth my brothers fall, and thus the ether beacons me to depths of black eternity, to dream of things long lost and gone, and futures which might yet be won, though not by me, lest you mistake, for others wait the stage to take. And while their worth is far from sure, I bid falling curtain pause. Let encore be my final word, the epilogue to death preferred. This makes me happy. Sad and happy at the same time. Or hasad. Okay, that sounds like fucking Arabic. Anyway, you know, happy and sad at the same time. This is enough for a moment of levity. What are these 3 asterisks? What does even levity mean? Rip Elidibus, people sad. You know, back in Shadowbringers, when we saw the baby, the little Zela, getting turned, after Dawn, you were there. Do you remember? Do you remember what I said on the little baby Zela? I said, kill the kid. It will be our downfall. And it was the reason Teslin died, right? How ironic that an expansion later, I find myself saying, don't kill the kid. I wish I get to meet old Elidibus as he was before he became what he is. Back in Elpis. Back in Etheris. The unsundered Etheris. This is an intense moment, guys. This is an intense story. And there is only one way to make it more intense, isn't it? Let's do the transmogrant form!